Alicia, I wanted to turn to another topic. I recently found another article that you wrote about how Canada needs to invest in artificial intelligence. Maybe take us through your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, so like we were just talking, a lot of the conversation around growth and productivity has sort of naturally shifted to how does Canada build more stuff, right? And so you think about factories and equipment and those sort of physical things, but something that we kind of overlook when we think about that is AI, right? And the role of AI, I think, is really, really big when we think about what's going to drive our productivity, what's going to make our businesses more productive, be able to do more with less, create more value with less. It's AI. And I think we're really starting to finally see that shift of businesses are using AI, for literally everything to optimize delivery routes, to, sell more products to customers, to detect fraud, all sorts of things. And so what we recently looked at was just how does Canada really stack up in AI in terms of, the private investment in AI. So think about, those startups that are small but growing. How many dollars are pouring into that in Canada?
Mm.
And we looked across the G7, and I have to tell you that the US is really just in a league of its own, right? If you look at the dollars
Yeah, I
pouring
think
into the US,
you had a bar graph, didn't you, with the U.S. way over to the right hand side and everybody else closer to the left hand side.
you exactly, you have to squint to see anyone else, right? That is such an important takeaway on its own. I will say, of course, Canada, we're a smaller economy, we have fewer people. And so if you take that into account, we are more competitive. We're kind of second in the G7 and maybe third overall. So we're not uncompetitive. But what's interesting is if you look at the broader sort of ecosystem around AI, so think about not just the dollars that are pouring into private investment, but also just how much innovation and research, legislation, all these other kind of surrounding things are working in our favor. And I think the thing that concerns us is that Canada has actually declined in those rankings. Back in 2017, Canada was out about third globally. Now we're kind of middle of the pack. And so I think that's a big concern when we think about what's going to drive economic growth for Canada. We can't just think about building stuff and capital investment. That's great, but that's really only half the battle.
Yeah. How did this happen? How did we lose our edge?
Yeah. So what's interesting is one of the reasons is just it has not been a topic of conversation in government, right? So if you look at parliamentary proceedings, legislation, it just hasn't been a focus. And the concern there is AI is something that it requires some legislation, right? Just even for people to trust it, to use it. We don't want to be worried and not be able to sleep at night knowing, where is our data going? Is somebody going to use this information against me? And so that's where these indicators that check the ecosystem of AI really want to see, is the government actually forward thinking on this? And we really haven't seen that lately. So that's one of the reasons. But the other piece is just the infrastructure, that digital infrastructure. It's called our computing power. I'm not going to try to explain it because I'm an economist and I don't quite understand it. But that, unfortunately, is much weaker in Canada than elsewhere.
Got it. Okay. Well, certainly. Isn't Alberta doing a lot to place itself to be more competitive, at least in AI, and having the ability to manage the energy needs of AI and those kinds of things?
Yeah, I mean, Alberta has actually been a leader, kind of going back to the research that's come out of the University of Alberta and sort of related businesses. What's interesting, I didn't know this, is actually ChatGPT, some of its kind of origins or background actually traces back to Canadian research and from Alberta, which is a pretty cool thing. And so since then, yeah, we've seen, we've got Alta ML, which is a pretty cool machine learning company. We've got data centers now, which seems to be a pretty big focus for the government of Alberta. So I think we have a lot of opportunity in the province of Alberta. It's just a matter of, how do we harness that? How do we take it to the next level?
And what should Ottawa be doing? I notice we have a new minister in charge of AI. Is that a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great thing, right? So we've had a federal strategy on AI for some time, but no one really to lead the charge. So I think that's step one. I think another thing that was encouraging to see, frankly, was that it was a focus at the G7, right? So
Right.
that was kind of one of the chosen topics. And frankly, some of the most details were on AI and what the different countries kind of agreed to do.
Mhm.
And what was interesting to me in that was the focus on the public sector, actually. So,
Right.
how can the public sector use AI to be more efficient, to lower costs? I
Sure.
think that's something that all of us can get behind. And Canada has basically said that we're going to lead the
Sure.
charge. We're going to develop these labs to figure out
Right.
how do we use AI for good in government.
Sure.